In today's interest rate markets, let's take a look at the 10-year note futures as they're experiencing some sideways price action today. After a couple days of higher price action, we are seeing the 10-year note futures slightly lower on the session. In the middle of today's range, 120.18 is where the futures market is now. Intraday, though, we did see a high of 120.31, so just shy of the 121 handle. And that is the highest level for the 10-year note futures in 6 weeks. So we are holding at the top end of the recent range, even with a little bit of moderation here today. And looking at some of the driving factors, number one, I think you got to point to the data points released this morning, GDP revisions. So the market was reacting to that initially. I guess a mixed bag there, slight disappointment on the top line number as it was revised lower. But we also saw some adjustments within the pricing components within the GDP numbers. So I think overall, the market reacted a little bit to that this morning, where we did see a bid come into the 10-year treasuries. But then as we move through the day, I think there's a rotation taking place today to some degree, as we're seeing the equity markets realizing further upside today. So I think you're seeing a rotation out of the longer end of the curve and possibly some flows going out of the treasuries and into the equity markets, particularly on the back end of the curve today. So when you look at the yields, I do want to point out we do see a yield of 276 basis points right now on the 10-year. So that's up about 1.5 basis points on the session. And the yield curve is steepening today. So we're actually in the short-dated treasuries, from basically the monthly to the 2-year treasuries, we are seeing a little bit of strength there. So we're seeing again, those yields coming in a little bit day over day. And then as you move out on the curve, we are seeing some selling pressure a little bit, and those yields getting kicked up here a little bit. So that shifting of the yield curve today has been a steepening pattern. And I do want to point out the other thing that keep an eye on. We do have some PCE data tomorrow, that inflation data that certainly could have an impact in the market. So I think you're also seeing a potential for some shoring up or adjusting of positions ahead of those what I think are perceived as pretty key inflationary data points, and potentially could have an impact on how the Fed views things moving forward.